Well, thanks all for coming. Kurt and I wanted to share with you an exercise we've been going through, which is a project that we've had underway, which is researching the ultimate board presentation for CISO. In this process, we've probably had about 100 interviews over the last year talking to CISOs about what they want to present to the board and what's important. So we're going to share with that research and then some of the ideas that came out of that. So why don't we start, Kurt, with, I got this right here. Yeah. So I want to start by just reminding you a little bit about Benchmark, refamiliarizing you with Benchmark. I know, John, you're pretty intimately familiar with Benchmark right now, but it's really worthwhile going through the product once again and in terms of, and also talking about the recent enhancements and the program we have together to bring Benchmark and SIH together into the Benchmark Analytics Manager. Hello. So Benchmark really is the cornerstone of our performance management solution suite, and really rounds out our offering and supports our positioning as a leader in IT risk and performance management solutions. Now, does that resonate with you, that idea of security requiring a performance management function? Is that something you talk about regularly in your business? It's a new concept, obviously. Most other business cycles and disciplines all have a performance management aspect to it. Security really hasn't had one, a real formalized one. And we're looking to provide that forum where we put some science behind the need with the solution.
Yeah, it's true. For us, it's been traditionally risk and impact.
I'm sorry?
Risk and impact.
Risk and impact. Cool.
All the other infrastructure groups, we meet monthly on our metrics, and we struggle to come up with industry recognized metrics that we can present in a changing behavior kind of way. Mm-hmm. And so, infrastructure talks about uptime, application, they have their thing.
Right.
So security our push is to make these meaningful and make them consistent and not be the writers of our own metrics and really look to an authoritative source.
Cool.
To put in front of people.
Okay, great. So, so as you know, Benchmark has the two faces to it. One face is the community aspect, where we enable our organizations to join benchmark communities where they compare their results to their peers. So the objective of those communities is just that, to form a community where the organizations that join it can have a consensus on what matters to measure and constantly expand that. So we've put together a series of communities already. I don't know if any of you have joined them or joined any of the benchmark communities yet, or tried to. Okay. We've organized them around security discipline, vulnerability management, configuration auditing, antivirus, endpoint protection, patch management, and identity and access management, the communities we have out there right now. And in that offering, we have a series of metrics that, from our experience and research and from input from the members of that community, are things that they believe are important to measure, really the bellwether metrics in each of the disciplines that give you an idea of the health and fitness of your controls in that particular area. And we want to be much more aggressive now in speaking to the community about what is important for them to measure and expanding these capabilities. Recently, we've decided to merge together the basic service, which is free of charge, with a service that we have, a standard service that we were charging for. We're going to merge them together as a total free service. Welcome. And the objective of the standard service was to break up the community into segments so that organizations can compare themselves with organizations of like kind, industry group and size, and whatnot. So what we want to do is make those communities much more robust. So we're going to open them up all as free, and immediately when you join one of the benchmark communities, we'll start to present to you the information. Come on in. Hey guys. Okay. So we'll start to immediately. You'll start to see your participation, or you'll be able to compare your results to peers. And within that, we're going to have a much more aggressive recruiting effort. We want to actually engage the the participants today and helping us bring in new members. Okay, so I just wanted to talk to you about that. Those of you that haven't joined a benchmark community today, probably by the first quarter, we'll start, as you join, we'll be able to start presenting your information to you, comparing to your industry groups. Okay?
Jim,
Yes?
is there any aspect of the product now that you do charge for?
Yes. Okay, so that's the second aspect. So the first phase is we talked about is the community side, which is the comparison. The second phase of benchmark is internal performance management. That's where organizations start to use the same metrics, the same basic measurements, but they add the unique attributes to those that allow them to assess their performance in the context of their business. And we want to show you a little bit behind the scenes on that. So if you look at the difference between the two metrics, or the calculations, one set of metrics, which is the comparison metrics, has a set of attributes to it where they can't be changed. So when you join a benchmark community, we lock down those measurements and the exact algorithms, the arithmetic, the process of calculating that metric. So you can be assured that all members in that community are using the same methodology to both acquire the data and calculate the metrics. So when you compare your results, you have certainty that everybody's results are comparable to you. So that's a real important part of a benchmark community. In fact, there are 5 key things in a benchmark community that we think are essential and differentiate us. One is the metrics. The first is the metrics are based upon consensus of the community members of what matters to measure. Secondly, that there's comparability in those results that I just talked about, that you can be assured that all members that are contributing results have done it on the same basis, so that you have that comparability. The next element is that they're relevant, the ability to slice them up by industry group, SIC code and size and whatnot, so that you can refine your measurements. Secondly, there's transparency in how the data is acquired to go into that metric, and what the calculations are on that metric. And then lastly, that we have security and privacy, protecting the anonymity of the contributors. They can't ever be, it can't be ascertained as who a contributor is. We do that through aggregation. Hey, Rick. So those 5 things are really important to a community. So when you go into internal performance management, the rules change. It's really about you. It's about your business and your goals, your requirements, understanding your organization structure, and putting the metrics and the resulting scorecards in that context so it has meaning for your organization. So all the metrics routines the standard routines that we provide on the internal performance management side, which is the premium edition, have the ability to be customized. You can put your goals into them. You can put a baseline, a threshold, a goal, a target, and measure towards that. And that's the really first step of taking metrics from a basic fun fact to a true performance metric. You're going to assess your performance to some standard. So that's all charged for. Each one of those they're packaged by discipline again. So each premium pack has a large number of metrics that we've researched that are used today by organizations, and companion visuals and scorecards. And each of those can be customized for your requirements. The second thing we allow you to do is to actually scope your assessments. So you may want to have different goals for different classes of assets. So we have an asset management system. It's an integral part of benchmark, and we have a strategy for bringing that forward into the benchmark analytics manager and making that available to all our reporting and scorecarding capabilities. That asset management system allows you to actually reflect the structure of your organization. You can group assets by locations, by divisions, by risk categories, by compliance categories, and start to tag those, and customize those metrics uniquely for each of those disciplines. So you may have a different goal for, a class of assets that has highly sensitive information. You might want to scan more often and have a lower risk score target, for instance, for vulnerability management, than one that doesn't have personally identifiable information, or a group that doesn't have that. So you can set different goals for different classes. Again, use the same measurement, but set different targets. And that's an important part of this whole process of communicating within the organization, why you're doing things, how you're allocating your dollars. And it's a big part of what we talk about in this presentation. So does that make sense, John, in terms of how we do that? So one side is optimized for comparison, and the other one's optimized for performance analysis. Now, where they work together is really important and cool is that, you know, as you're setting, you want to set goals that are reasonable. And by participating in a benchmark community, you're getting the wisdom of the crowd. Of, you know, we actually provide you 3 benchmarks for each one of the scorecards we put out there. We provide a 12-month rolling average benchmark, so the gold standard. We provide a weekly benchmark, which sort of gives you a volatility index, what, you know, shows you how the benchmark will be moving on a weekly basis. That'll move based upon, you know, changes in practices of existing users and new people coming in. So you can see what's happening over a period of time.
Or time events like Patch Tuesdays.
Yeah, exactly. So you get to assess what the impact is of just general events out there. And the third one we provide is performance quadrants. So it's a pretty simple calculation, but really valuable. What we do is we take the whole population of those that are contributing, divide it by 4, and provide you a view of what the quadrants are, what the participations within those quadrants, and where you stand. And that is the basis. Most organizations use that as a basis for assessing whether their goals are reasonable. And they can do that by taking a look at the aggregate community or taking a look at a refined community of organizations in the same industry, geography, and size. So when you're communicating within the organization what good goals are, you have a basis for analyzing those goals and justifying those goals based upon the benchmark community is how they're performing. But within that, it's also, you know, it's also useful to sit back and really step back from that and say, we don't want to always just be number 1 in every category. You might make a conscious decision that I want to be at the top level of the second quadrant. You know, I want to spend and throttle my spending right there. And that's an important part of the communication to an organization too, as to where you see you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck and how you're throttling your investment. So it becomes a very useful tool for you. So that's a background on the solution. Whoops. I got this right here. Here we go. All right. And you know, okay, I wanted to remind everybody, and hopefully everybody got the opportunity to pick that up. It's now available on premise. There were organizations that wanted to use the internal performance management side, install it on their prem rather than use it in the cloud. So we were able to fulfill on that requirement. Did everybody pick that up? Get a chance to take a look at it? Okay. And we are, and for those users of Suite 360, we're of course giving the free of charge the vulnerability management and the configuration auditing. So let's talk about our benchmark community again, and a little bit about these bellwether metrics and how they're used. And I think this is an important prelude into a board presentation. So early on, when Kurt and I were doing early research into this, we did our research organizations like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, General Electric, and we actually went in there under contract in each one of those organizations and did some work for them. They either wanted visualization expertise or wanted data collection expertise or database guys.
Or just automation.
Just automations. They want to take a look at that. So we did this on our consulting engagement. And one of the more interesting engagements we had was with General Electric, and Gary Reiner was the CIO. And he had a very mature metric program throughout GE, and a whole group that was orchestrating that program out of Danbury.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they wanted to. Our team had done a lot of research into visualization, and they really wanted to use our visualization tool to orchestrate their effort. I'm going to talk about some of the unique attributes of what we do with visualization that they wanted to take advantage of. But when we were interviewing Gary, one of the things he talked about in terms of the metric program is how he had developed a series of key performance indicators for one key performance indicator for each of the security disciplines within GE. And you select that key performance indicator and we review it every week with every one of the ISOs and every one of the GE businesses. And that key performance indicator would give, at a glance, would give that group a view based on its condition of the health and fitness of that particular area. So in identity and access management, he selected, password failed password attempts was his number one metric. In AV and endpoint protection, it was average signature latency date. Was the age of the signature, just the AV signatures out there. And scanning, he talked about the CVSS scores and the average date since last scan. So that would tell them if they were meeting their goal for those things. They would, they'd take a look at it. If it was in a green condition because they were meeting their goal, they'd go on to the next thing. But if it fell into a yellow or a red position based upon their scoring, then they would take a deeper dive into that area and find out what was going on. Now, the metric doesn't tell them they're secure or not. What the metric was an alert that something was happening that required management attention. So we brought this concept, we defined this concept, and we call them bellwether metrics. So that's another area that we're doing a lot of research with our users in, is understanding what those key performance indicators are that will give you an idea of how effective a particular initiative is implemented, and allow you to use it as a management tool for discussion with your organization. So our organizations like, and the one thing in G that I thought was particularly interesting when you came back, and we had put this catalog together of 100 metrics, and I think we found they had like 26.
Yeah. And they were all described as opportunities over defects.
Yes.
And that was the consistent language that they had, so everyone knew what the number was, right? They didn't have to guess, is this a percentage, is this a count, whatever. Everything was always classified in the same way to ease communication amongst the team members.
Yes.
They were giving a lot of people access to these reports.
Right. So so of course they were a Six Sigma shop. They are a Six Sigma shop, and in Six Sigma parlance, you have an opportunity and you have a number of defects. So an opportunity would be a host in their world, and a defect would be a condition, an adverse condition found, like the signature is out of doesn't meet goal, and they express that as a percentage. So, and everything was expressed as a score of this opportunity over defect. Now that was really important because what that allowed them to do is to take all those scores across all the divisions of GE and aggregate them and roll them up into a board presentation to say, how are they performing in their key areas? And they had a normalization of that score. So they weren't sitting there talking about it in terms of just metrics saying, our goal is 7, is just to make sure our signature latency is no more than 7 days. And this guy was 8 days, and this guy was 14 days. They'd be able to say the overall condition looks like this. It's in a green condition or a yellow condition, and the contributors to the yellow condition of these divisions, they're red, and they're, and the following things happen. We made a new acquisition. We've had a lapse in our efforts in this area, and this is what we've done to remediate it. So that normalization around scoring is really important. Because the next thing, once it becomes trusted in an organization, the board and readers can start to rely on that information. So when it tells them it's red or yellow or green, it clicks with them how we got that information. It's fact-based. It's not opinion-based. You can say, how do you feel about your scanning effort? Are you doing good? Are you doing bad? You're actually able to say, our scanning goal is we want to scan this critical assets every 7 days. We want to remediate them. And that's the next one we're going to be doing is the next bellwether metric will be mean time to patch, which is a very, very important metric to organizations. So we're going to be putting that out there into the bellwether community and publishing it. So this normalization is really important in scoring. Okay, that's sort of a background of things that we learned. But this is a typical presentation of what we can give you in an industry for your bellwether metrics, what the benchmark average is, the median for the benchmark, and what the quartiles look like. And these communities are becoming increasingly more robust. So you've heard our mantra here that we want to deliver to the CISO what the CFO has. But you think about it, a CFO goes into a board meeting and talks about their performance. They typically talk about, express things in percentage of growth. It's not very, it could be interesting to go and say that my sales were $1 million or $1 billion, but you don't really know if that's good or bad unless you give it as a comparison to your industry and to where you work. So, boards are used to looking at things from a performance standpoint. So we're looking to use that model in our in delivery of our solution. We talked about our packs and making those available. So in each one of our areas, it's important to note that when you look at our catalog, what you're going to see is a lot of fine-grained measurements. And individually, they may not look particularly exciting, okay? Because what we're doing is we want to go in and take a look at all the conditions that you have in your organization we think that are meaningful to assess. And all our base metrics provide, are all captured in XML, they're all available in our catalog, and they're all immediately deployable. Like you can take them and you can attach them to data, put a schedule on them, and they'll run, and they'll give you a result. And
they'll be able to do that with the benchmark on-prem. They'll have all those scorecards
exactly.
and the CM.
Right, the whole thing will be there, right. And then what we want to do is show you the set of tools of how you would take each one of these standard measurements and add to it the things that allow you to make it contextually rich and relevant to your organization. And that's what really brings it to the next level. So as you go through our catalog and you look at all the companion scorecards, what you'll see is hundreds of measurements of important that give you a state. Will give you a base state for aspects of each one of these disciplines, and the tools allow you to then make them useful to your organization and put them in the context of what's important to you. And we'll talk about that. Okay, so let's go through our research. Oh, I'll come back to that. So first of all, as I talked about, we've been interviewing CISOs now for the last 18 months. We've had over 100 interviews. Elizabeth and her team set us up on a weekly basis, probably have 2 or 3 calls, 30-minute to 1-hour calls with CISOs, where we want to understand what the state of the art, their state of the art is in measuring their performance of their security, who they're reporting to within the organization, and what their concerns are and needs are in delivering information throughout the organization. We also have had a couple of important studies done over the past year. We've worked with the Internet Research Group. We've worked with Securiosis, right? And we continue to bring in organizations to discuss this issue. We are actually members of the show we were at, Elizabeth, was the standard, the CSO.
Security standard?
Yeah, security standard, yeah. So we're part of their team as well. So you won't be surprised that once you talk to 100 people that there's no standard view of this thing. That and this is something we found very early on, right? Is that there's standard concepts, but there was no one standard set of presentations.
Yeah, standard concepts like picking out something like a bellwether metric, a leading indicator. We saw that at GE. We saw it at a couple of your customers as well, where they're supported by a host of additional detailed metrics, but they always, they want to communicate less in most cases, 4, 5, 6 things, just a handful of presentations. And they also want to couch it in business terms and not in security terms. So I found that at another customer where they wanted to communicate their performance to their execs by saying, we have a business problem, and it is, and we have this problem. What are we doing to proactively address it? We have a metric for that. Are our policies effective? So they have a metric for that. And then, is anyone minding the store? Is anyone paying any attention to what's happening? And that's how they would couch it. And that's any problem that you would solve in that fashion. And that's how they would communicate up the chain. And the problem was, we have a problem with malware. So what percent of the systems had malware? What are we doing to proactively address it? Vulnerability scanning. Are policies in place, strong enough, and then are host compliant? The configuration auditing. Is anyone minding the store? This is an asset management system, and does anybody own this box?
Right.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And they pick those 5 metrics from literally 50, 60 that they had implemented.
And so when we were as we were doing those interviews too, we saw that there were really a set of reoccurring themes, and it was a series of questions they'd be asked by their board. Their board would ask them, "What's good security? What is good security for our company? What should our governance?" We translate that to what should our governance program look like? How do you define a governance program? Boards are very tuned into governance these days at a corporate level, and IT security governance is a critical component of that. Organizations like ISACA giving guidance to boards on the importance of IT security governance and having a good plan in place. There's a pretty good document out that talks about the 5 outcomes of a solid IT security governance program in terms of risk management, compliance requirements, and they are now guiding boards to use metrics to develop standard metrics for their efforts. So boards want to know what good security is. They increasingly want to become knowledgeable on it. In fact, Abe Kleinfeld came out of our board meeting a month ago or 2 months ago, and with a question from our board. Since we are a provider of cloud services, our board is interested in knowing, what is our governance program, how are we protecting our customer data, what liabilities or risks does that expose the organization to, and what are our programs to mitigate that risk. So this is happening at board levels all over the place. And it comes out of the context of governance. And boards want to be educated on. So this is a true education process for boards and what their responsibilities are. The second theme that comes through all the time is risk. This comes in I used to get confused by this because boards, many CISOs or members of executive teams would ask us about risk metrics. Can you give us risk metrics? And there are metrics out there in public domain. Verizon and others have put out information on what risks are occurring out there or what risks and events have presented risks. But risk metrics by themselves are very difficult, and they're very unique to each organization because each organization's risk register is quite unique. So where we boil that down to is allow organizations to understand and articulate where they have concentrations of value at risk, and to present that to their board and then demonstrate to them the things that they're doing to mitigate those risks and how they're allocating their dollars to address those particular areas. And we do that through our asset management system. I'd like to bring you through that exercise as well. And then lastly, this will be no surprise to John, more and more organizations are telling us that they want to compete, that their boards will always ask them the question, how do we compare to peers? They want to know within our industry, within our geography, within our size, they're asking. They'll ask about comparison to peers, but really what they're asking is, what are the best practices out there, and how well are we doing vis-a-vis others in our industry? Because they're used to, on the financial side, on the overall, financial governance side, they're always looking at, how well they are competing in a marketplace, and it's all that's comparison to their competitors. We use the gentle term peers in the security side, but on the financial performance side, it's the competitors. So these are the 3 key themes that we see, and we're addressing. We put together a series of scorecards and presentations that address these. Do you see anything else? Is there out there that you think is that we're missing here? Okay. All right. So let's go through that. Before we do that, okay. So the characteristics of a board presentation, we asked them, what was this all about? We want to know how much time they got at a board meeting. Did they? We asked them everything. Do they stay for the whole board meeting? How much of the board meeting they get to? Do they go at every board meeting? And that was all over the lot. But basically, they talked about the concerns they had in terms of presenting to the board and the failures they've had basically in presenting to the board. So most of these are characteristics of things to avoid. Those that pull fire alarms at the board meeting, try to sell fear, it just never goes over very well. No one gets it. They don't get asked back. So really what a board really wants to do is have a discussion about their business. So they're looking to make this presentation very relevant and to show the business value of security. Put it in a context that's meaningful to the board. And to be very brief and very concise. They usually get 3 to 5 PowerPoints at a board meeting, a half hour for a discussion. One of them joked with me they had 3 PowerPoints, but they had 40 builds within the PowerPoint. So So you get everything they want for it. But they really try not to put out, to inundate them with information. They wanted to be, very high level, very oriented towards the business. So then the second set of requirements, you ask behind the scenes, what are your other concerns? And they have all kinds of interesting concerns about how they prep the data for the board. Like, where did it come from? Who gave it to me? How did I get it? How do I get it in this presentation? Do I get time to review it before it gets to the board? It's something getting into the board presentation, and I don't have time to vet this information. So, we're used to our financial presentations being really locked down, a whole set of procedures around GAAP and other things that enable us to have a lot of confidence in these presentations. In the security realm, there haven't been a lot of tools that really enable us to do that, to build things on fact-based, to put fact-based metrics out there in front of the organization, and to use that information as a vehicle for communicating the state and the effectiveness and the impact of the investments we're making. So organizations are quite concerned about, how do we provision this whole process?
We saw that early on at Goldman, actually. And I had the luxury of hanging out with their secure InfoSec team for a good while and really understanding what their issues were that helped drove the requirements for benchmark. And one of their biggest fears was that they had about an 8 to 10 step process in which they would go from data to scorecards. And the biggest fear was explaining if he was ever challenged on what those numbers really meant. Because of those 8 to 12 steps, he understood about 4 of them. They were running processes that somebody else had built, old consultants 5 years ago. He always asked me if I knew Perl, because he was trying to change his Perl script. And he was, and I asked him, so is your issue that it really takes 3.5 weeks to put this together on a monthly report? He said, no, the issue is I can't explain it.
Yeah, and that's an important aspect of performance management. Think about, this is the third performance management exercise that I've been involved with in the software industry. I did financial performance management, I did human resource performance management. We took that model and brought it into security performance management. So when we're reviewing employees, there's a certain set of rules. They could be, and they're usually explicit, and we understand them, that, our review, we're going to have a consistent set of evaluation criteria, okay? And we're going to explain that to the employee, and that evaluation criteria is going to be used across the entire employee population, so it's consistently applied, that the information is transparent and available to them to review on their performance, and you have a discussion about it, and it's going to be fact-based. So we have an expectation that we're going to get trustworthy information. We have that on the financial side. When we're reviewing financial performance, they're going to get trustworthy information delivered to me that I can make decisions on. And so in any performance management function, that element of trustworthiness was very important. And that came through in all of our research, that as teams were sitting down and evaluating the effectiveness of their IT security, they wanted to be able to trust in the information. They wanted to take as much opinion on it as they could, and they wanted to make sure that they consistently applied those principles. And so since in all cases, virtually all cases, the CISO themselves did not prepare the presentation. Their staff did. And their staff needed a set of tools that they could rely on to orchestrate this effort. When we were doing our early research, I had a persona. The persona was an individual named Daryl. And we followed Daryl around through the process of compiling this information and the obstacles that Daryl got into. And we automated that and then validated that with the customers. But this idea, 2 elements of transparency in terms of how you got the information, and then trustworthiness prevailed throughout the process, and that was a key requirement in our orchestration effort and writing tools. We want to show you some of those tools today as we go through the presentations. But this is as big an issue to organizations, and it manifests itself in many ways. One of the big ways is that that the team always wants to make sure that whatever's being presented, they vet. They really want that. You want to make sure if they have to answer a question from a board, that they got a chance to look at what the information was, and they got to validate it themselves before it went up. And so there's a whole orchestration around that. That's a requirement. So many of you have seen this already, but this is really the governance view. And there's some attribute. This is a standard deck of scorecards that we have within Benchmark. And what we've done with this presentation is refined through research with lots of organizations, sort of refined it to 3 areas that we provide as a standard set of scorecards that are all customizable. So we have this capability to build a hierarchy around and describe a governance initiative to an organization. And typically a governance initiative will look like, they'll have a major theme. What are we trying to do with security? What is our goal with security? Are we trying to protect the brand or protect the organization? Usually it'll come, that's a very high level strategy statement that will go to the board level and say, the objective of our security program is to, it could be one or more things, but typically it's one large, one strategic objective that's trying to be met here. It could be reduce risk. It could be to just protect the brand of the organization. This one we selected for illustration purposes, protect the organization. And then we allow organizations to describe all the things, the programs they're going to put, the initiatives they're going to put in place that fulfill on that objective. So in this case, we have protect the infrastructure, protect information, and protect identities and access. So these are the key themes that this organization is investing in to protect that organization and ensure that they're making appropriate investments in security. And this provides a forum where they can start to connect the security initiatives to business objectives. So we're here in security to protect the brand, to protect our organization, to assure that we have continuity in operations, those types of things. And too many times we've seen in the typical board presentation, they may go up and talk about our vulnerability management program, and the board's eyes glaze over because they don't even understand what a vulnerability management program is about. But this hierarchy allows them to articulate the objectives of the organization in a business sense, and connect it to the business, and then encapsulate those really finite programs underneath it so that your board can connect it. And it educates them on what best practices are. So it's a true education process about what good governance is, and then how the governance actually impacts their business positively. So some typical conventions, we found that boards have an appetite for red, yellow, green. It gives them a state of where they are, and they like to understand, are we improving or not improving? So here we can use a series of spark charts that'll show the direction of that program, improving and not improving. Now, and this was through a lot of experience, we came up with something that was this simple. Because we always run into the golf score problem, right? Explain that.
Up and to the right is always good. Everyone, the golf score, the golf flow is good.
Right.
And then baseball,
right.
And then you give a scorecard with a variety of views, and it's confusing.
Yes.
Everything has to be simple, just like opportunities and defects.
Right. So a metric may be something like, I want it, at the next level down would be something like, I want to have my average risk score. I have a target for my average risk scores. And the spark chart would show us doing very well reducing that risk. But the chart goes down, and the board looking at that saying, that doesn't look good. How can that be green and this be going down? So we developed this mechanism, we learned this largely from GE, of scoring a metric and then rolling them up. So in this case, what we've done is said all the metrics that are underneath these things, through our hierarchy, and I'll show you how we build that in a minute, we score them to a goal. We always get a percentage. And now we can now track against, is that percentage improving? And then when we chart it, it'll show whether we're improving or not. And we don't have that mixture of, geez, this one going down means it's good, and this one going up means it's bad, and all that kind of stuff. So the ability to normalize this and then aggregate this information is really important to the presentation, to tell the story. So here we're talking about our overall security program, protecting the organization. And then we have the key components are protecting our infrastructure, protecting information, and protecting identities. And we score them. And then our system allows you to create those scores, and it also allows you to drive these colors. You can put your own policies in. Our standard policy is that if you've scored 90% or above, it's green. 50 to 90%, it's yellow. Below 50%, it's red. We have many organizations that don't do red unless it's totally absent. They never have a red unless they're not doing it. So if they're supposed to have an antivirus program and they don't, it would be red. If they have an antivirus program, it couldn't be anything but yellow or green, which I think is a pretty good convention, actually. It shows that, because red scares people. So, but these are all driven by formulas.
And then each one of the infrastructure information identity can also, their scores are then weighted. So you can identify, infrastructure might have a weighting of 5, identities might have a weighting of 7. So you can adjust your weightings to get you the appropriate scores.
Right.
How do you handle the overlap? Because you can protect your infrastructure, which is also protecting identity and also protecting information.
Yeah, so you do, and I think, and these are all adjustable by you, even the descriptions, okay. But we're very, we were very deliberate in our approach here. Everything to do with identities had to do with identity and access management. So that was all about our hygiene, identity and access management hygiene. We're talking about protect information. We thematically, we're talking about encryption, talking about DLP, and those categories of products that are protecting the information, actually database security. And we're talking about infrastructure, talking about those things we're talking about protecting the network. Okay, and that's how we categorized it. Okay. So we typically do that through, at some point we come in and work with Jeff. We'll interview you, and what's your lexicon? How do you like to describe these things? We'll put them in the right categories and memorialize that in the product for you. Okay. That's what we do.
So this gets built out into a big tree of multiple levels, and then right down to the KPIs that you want to measure.
Okay. But what people really like is this. First of all, it actually documents your governance program for you and helps you communicate it. And we went very quickly down into very technical for presentation purposes. But what we're doing is actually educating the organization as to why we're doing these things. We want to protect our infrastructure. We want to shore uptime of our network. We want to enable our business. We want to assure business continuity. These are our critical. This is where talking about our critical business systems. All these investments assure that we're protecting that infrastructure and keeping it up and going. So it gives you that opportunity to have that dialogue and connect the real detailed things we do in security to the business imperatives. So this is one level with a governance side. So what we'll do now is go into each one of these initiatives, and we'll do the same thing. We'll provide a spark chart, a score, and a visual color, and we can drill down in even deeper into the programs. Now I'm talking about key performance indicators. So again, to go up here, here's my key initiatives are antivirus, configuration auditing, patch management, vulnerability management. If I want to look at the state of vulnerability management, here are my key performance indicators. And if I want to drill down into the detail, I can say, what's happening down here? I can do everything saying, here's my, here's you can see my average risk scores are increasing in this case. That may happen a lot if you have a brand new program. So that's it's an interesting way about organizations use their goals. They may have a goal with a new program to say, I'm actually going to show it's going to be green if my risk score is actually increased, because it shows I'm actually generating risk scores now where I didn't do it before. So that's the whole the power of performance management is you can tailor these counts and metrics to your business. We'll show you where the benchmark is, and we'll provide some analysis of that benchmark. So you can see we continue to go down this tree from an overall strategy to the elements of the strategy to the programs that we put in place to address the strategy, down to the metrics that actually show you the effectiveness of what you're doing. And it's nice and simple. It cascades down very easily. And the result is you get a playbook for your board. Here's what good security is. Here's what's important to us. And here's how well we're performing on that. And then you're going to get the rest of the questions. Okay, so the next question we typically get is, this is very generic. It's telling me about what we think good security is, but should security be applied, just blanket across the business? Aren't we beyond the days of defense in depth, where I'm just going to do the same thing to everything? I want to be a little more intelligent about what we're doing, how we're allocating our dollars. And particularly when you're at a board level, that's really the message you want to give us. We're spending money where it really counts. And we have a program in place that I can articulate, and I want you to trust me that I'm doing that. I'm showing you how to do it. So when I ask for an appropriation, I mean it. We're looking for impact. So it conditions a board to start to think about, for that presentation, they know it's going to be a budget appropriation somewhere along the line. So this is where we start. This is an exercise we go through CISOs on a risk view. And I actually did this first time with Earl Newscomb at Estee Lauder. Earl is the CIO there. And what he wanted to go to his board with and present to them where he had highest concentrations of risks. So he wanted to show that he was actually taking dollars and allocating it to those areas in each of his efforts. He was actually subdividing his efforts up, like spending more time on looking at, of scanning high-risk assets than he was non-high-risk assets. And he wanted to show them that he was spending his money very, very wisely, and then what the impact was at of reducing risk. So we came up with a series of landscape slides. And the first thing is that we want to go into a board meeting, and we want to tell them what we're securing. One of the reasons why we're here. First I told you how we're doing it. What's our formula for securing? Now I want to show you what we're securing in our business. So we're securing our assets. So we have, we can see that we have growth in our business assets. This is just a view of, this is hosts in the organization. And here's where they are. We have a sample organization that's actually a green transportation company. We were in Cambridge at one time, Cambridge, Mass, by MIT. So we had this green transportation company. People thought it was so silly, but I always liked it. But, and so we want to say, here's where our assets, how our assets are distributed throughout our organization, our key divisions. Here's how they're distributed by major data centers in our operations. So this is where they are. And the next time when we went through and talk about, what's the distribution by asset, by platform, and by type, because this will also dictate some of the things we'll do in our organization where we may have high risks. It's also just a good exercise to show that we're aware of what we have in our business. The lights are on. Gus is here. If Gus comes in and says, well, I sold 10 customers to the board, they want to, that's nice to know. But what he tells them is what industries we're penetrating, why we're penetrating those industries. We've got a program to go after this particular set of industries because they have high risk. So there's a rhyme and reason to the investments we're making in our sales organization, our marketing distribution efforts that's meaningful to the board. Right? So it isn't just a bunch of numbers. And this really applies to security. So where are my assets? Where do I have, what's the profile of those assets? In fact, we know in Cyberscope, that's a critical part of what they're asking for in Cyberscope, right?
Right, absolutely, yeah. They want to be able to blend their scoring systems and their performance based upon type, location, department, agency, et cetera.
And the first thing they ask all the participants in Cyberscope is, do you know your assets? Do you know where your assets are? And what the complexity of them are. So the next thing we did is we went through and started classifying their assets. They're a public company, and they wanted to know, they had a compliance risk. They had a big compliance operation there. So they wanted to know what all their SOX assets are and how they're distributed. And then we went through and took a look at how we were going to explain to the board where we had the highest concentrations of value that we needed to protect. And we did that around sensitivity information. They're a retail organization. We looked at where they were doing they had a retail organization, which are their stores, and they also are a manufacturer of cosmetics. And they have formulas for perfume and all those sorts of things that are real. They're IP. That was the real value of their business. So we took those two dimensions and said their customers and the personally identifiable information we have their customers and their IP internally. And we classified information as sensitive and non-sensitive. So now we could explain to the board and say, okay, now we have these two classes, and we're going to devise a series of programs in our governance. We're going to take our governance model and superimpose it over these and have different goals and objectives for each of these classes. It really starts to change actually the way the organization managed their whole security operation. People are aware now of where they had critical assets in the organization that really needed to be protected. There was a dialogue in the organization about what we were doing about that, and there was a sense of realism in terms of the budget allocation of where we're going to spend money and time and effort on these things. And they're quite successful in getting their appropriations. And so Earl used to call it, he wanted to show them all the fences that he wanted to put around things and why some fences were going to be higher than other fences. That was his euphemism for his presentation. So this analysis is a series of landscape slides that we now have in our portfolio, in our catalog.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And in our asset management system, as you saw as part of our presentation on the Benchmark Analytics Manager, our asset management system is a critical part of this solution. So what it allows us to do is to go and say, for our sensitive assets, these assessments, so these these scorecards and metrics are oriented scope to this class of assets that have their set of unique goals, and here's the things that we're doing, and why, and actually why we're not spending money on other things, because we're concentrating it here. And this is a really cool business conversation with the board. I mean, you're saying, I'm spending dollars here, I have a fixed amount of money, I'm allocating it to the right places, we have key payback to our business, impact on our business, and you can come back and look at the other business metrics of availability and those types of things that support this. So the risk view, this is a view that we saw very successful in talking to CISOs and implementing with them around risk. So rather than just saying, this metric says I have risk, what we've done is an analysis, and this is in essence a risk register of sorts that says this is where our key systems are. You can get to any level of granularity. You can identify, our asset management system will allow you to identify all these assets by name, by host, by what system they're in, and all those characteristics. Right?
Click on that link, and it will drill you right down to just those assets. Yeah.
So this is where, in this regard, if at a top level for a board, we couldn't show them everything we're doing, is where we took this concept of bellwether metrics and applied it to a asset scope of our sensitive assets to say how well we're doing and how well we're improving based on our investments. So we took our performance metrics, the key ones that showed, we want to condition the board to see the same things time after time. So they start to, you can have a dialogue about it. So selected the key metric in each of the areas and charted it for them. So went through the landscape, then charted for them to show the condition and where we're improving or not in each of those areas. And then we could bring that down into the critical data centers, that operation. So for each one, so they could start to compare internally. And that's the other power of the product is, well, we talk a lot about the external performance management side, the peer group. It's really this internal peer comparisons that really starts a cycle of improvement internally. Where when you start to compare locations and divisions or business units to one another, organizations start to think about, and you're giving that information to a business manager about their performance in security. They understand how it's tied to the business, how it's driving value. Now they can see how they compare to their peers. And now they have a context for giving instructions in their organization. Like many organizations, IT groups report into a business manager, and those IT groups have responsibility for maintaining those assets. And much of what they do is re-imaging and provisioning things to those assets. So that business manager needs to have a context for why they're doing that, and this provides that. So, a very simple approach to doing that. So the metric is really not about showing that you have a risk or presenting a fear. What it's doing is it's a business discussion about here is what's valuable to our businesses, what drives our company. These are things that are important to us because they probably just had a discussion with sales and revenue, so we connect these systems, drive revenue. These systems are where we maintain our customer relationships. These systems are those which we protect our IP, and here are the unique things I'm doing with our governance program to do that and how well we're succeeding in that regard. And again, I think this is actually a good practice. And I know that early on we were worried about it, but so do I ever want to report average virus definition age to the board? Well, this is educating them as to how to connect a program that they hear about to a business value that's important to them. And this process enables that whole communication. Does that make sense? So this exercise, actually, we can do this within our product. You can show some of the asset management system and stuff like that. Okay, show you how we do that with you. So the last one, the next one is the comparison view. When I came from ClearPoint into nCircle, Abe asked me, with this product, he said, what's the promise of this thing? What's the big unfulfilled, value out there? And consistently we were asked at every customer, sooner or later, how do I compare to my peers? What are the best practices out there? And how do we, I'm challenged by my manager, I'm challenged by my board, how do we compare to our peers? So we set out that be our first value that we deliver here at nCircle, because no one else has done it and out there successfully and done it with real facts and data as we have. So you have something you can really be confident in that these measures are based upon reality out there. We're actually gathering empirical evidence about what the best practices are and how people are performing on them. So, but John, as you know, this was a big deal. You asked us about this in your industry. In fact, Kurt's talking a little bit later on in the next session about how to set up your own peer group. So we think that the future of this product is around this peer comparison, internally and externally. So we look at micro communities and macro communities. You know, it could be a series of state agencies that want to compare themselves and see how well they're doing to a set of standards. It could be an industry group that is looking to promote a particular agenda and is looking to look for government sponsorships. So they want to show what's happening. It could be, or it could be your organization wanting to project itself as the leader in a particular area, the top 2%. Top 2 percentile of the industry performance in these areas. And particularly internal for organizations, I think in order for us to get to that point where we understand how important security is and how we can affect security as business managers in the same way we understand how we can affect business performance, you know, the financial aspect of it, we need something like this. Because we have that every day. We go through, you know, I'm sure every one of us go through quarterly or monthly budget to actual reviews of our expenses. So we know, right, John? You know, we know that we have certain financial controls that we're responsible for monitoring. It could be as simple as making sure all the expense reports in our division meet the spending requirements, and you excel at that, John. I know I've heard that before, or that. You try. I'm teasing you. Or that that we're meeting our revenue objectives, or we're meeting our spending objectives in our organization. So we have this inherent sense of what our role is in driving good financial performance, and we use the mechanisms like this in reporting our financial metrics. Delivering that security allows us to engage the entire organization, understanding what good security is all about and what our individual roles in doing that. So the comparison view is critical, and we talked about the 5 ingredients there. So what I would have Kurt do for us is this is the story behind it. We show scorecards all the time. We show these beautiful pictures. We show the story, but there's a whole science behind this to orchestrate a reliable, trustworthy, repeatable, and consistent performance management effort. So can you talk us through that and show us a little bit of the software that does that? Okay.
I'll do all that.
Great.
Thanks. So architecturally, what we've been seeing is a bunch of metrics and scorecards that illustrate business issues. And so let me just kind of go through the pieces of it and go down granular on how it all works. So if you start from I knew that built out. So we're seeing this type of information. And so what we have is a bunch of scorecards, which are visualizations of one or more metrics, right? Nice, pretty pictures that then provide the facts and analytics that are provided by a metric. The way we define a metric does a number of things. A metric has all the data processing logic, so it knows how to go and talk to the different products that you have. And it understands what information it needs to pull. It's got the business logic, so all your functions and formula, all that genius, all those formulas are all within a metric as well. The end result of a metric is an answer. We store a library or a database of answers that you can then use to scorecard or continue to process with additional metrics, to do aggregations, to do blended scoring. You can bring a variety of products together and do some correlation with metrics as well. Metric also is self-documented. It's got its own schedule. All of the information about a metric and how that number is generated and then displayed is all expressed in our XML. It's all in one place. The way metrics then get their data is through either a data adapter or connector. A data adapter is the programming code that knows exactly how to talk to IP360 or CCM or antivirus and endpoint protections. All the logic is all built in. You literally can pick and choose. I don't want virus information. You say, that's all I want. It has all the logic, it knows how to get that data for you to process it. Connector can talk to any product. It's all technology based. So if you've got a homegrown data warehouse you want to connect to, we can do that as well. The contract between the metrics and the data adapters are data sets. These are the information or pieces of information that a metric needs in order to calculate. And then you talk to your data sources. So that's kind of how everything all fits together. The data source that we connect to the metrics, to the visualization, all working together in an architecture to automate the generation and communication of these.
So, and we have this Metric 101 course that we love to give because we could really talk dirty about metrics too. The people down in the organization have to orchestrate these things. If you go back, Kurt, there's some principles behind orchestrating a performance management effort that we think are very important and that we have enabled organizations to succeed with it, and we enable within our product. We have the capability. So the first thing we want to do is separate the visualization from the calculation of the metrics. The reason we want to do that is we want to be able to reuse these metrics in multiple visualizations because they could be audience specific. They could be crafted. Those visualizations could be crafted for the various audiences. So a board may just want to see that spark chart in red, yellow, green. But the operating manager may want to see that spark chart, red, yellow, green, and the top 10 conditions that are causing that so they can take action on it. So that metric, you want to be able to reuse that answer across multiple presentations and have consistency to each of those. So if I were talking to the operating manager, I said, we reported this to the board. What we'd like to see is, what did we do to improve these conditions the next time? I want to show that delta. But that it's really important that you can tie that metric to that detail, so you can have a real, an actionable conversation. So we separate the visualization from the calculation of the metric, and then each metric has logic in it that declares what you want to store, the verbosity of the data that you want to store from the calculation of that metric. In our benchmark metrics, all we want to store is the basic statistic, because we're going to compare number of days, average number of days of signature latency, and that's all. It'll go to the cloud, and there'll never be any information on that. But internally, for performance management, you want to see number of days and the top 25 offenders. You might want to send that to the remediation group and then track those. So you can always throttle the amount of data that you actually capture. The other aspect is that we've in the data sets, metrics are deterministic. That means what you want to measure. We're not talking about going out and wandering around trying to find something out. We know what controls we have in place. We know what our programs are. We've decided that this is what our good security is, and we've decided that this is how we're going to evaluate it. That's how a good performance management system works. We agreed upon those metrics as an organization, and then we reuse them over and over again. So they're completely deterministic. And so we put them on a schedule, and we run the same schedule, same time each month or each week or whatever, so we have consistency for trending. And then organizations could be using multiple products. God forbid they could have multiple scanners. Someone may have made a mistake and bought some other type of scanner, and they're trying to get off of it, but they still have that scanner out there, and they have IP360. So we want to be able to show at the aggregate level how well they're performing, so we need to normalize those data sets. So what we've done in part of the science of our performance management effort, or you may have multiple divisions that have different AV solutions. We have normalized the data sets and through our adapters, so we know if we go after Symantec and we go after McAfee, that we pull that information out, that the set of data that gets presented to the metric logic has now been normalized, and you get the same answer for comparison internally and externally. This is an important part of this whole process of orchestrating a reliable and trustworthy metrics effort that delivers that, that conversation at the board that you're going to have every quarter or so. So this architecture is really built around a science of performance management that is organized around building confidence in the program and reliability in the program and repeatability in the program.
So if we apply that architecture to some scorecards, what you do find is detailed operational security metrics in scorecards down at a real low level in a variety of different areas that then rolls up. So additional metrics will then roll up that information, allow you to score it, set your goals and objectives, and measure your progress. You can then integrate the asset management system that we're talking about to view that information through the lens of concentrations of risk or areas of improvement throughout your organization, and then roll that up at a higher level, score it, set your objectives, and then communicate it to a variety of audiences. So you can drill down as deep as you need to go, and you can also roll up and then communicate at whatever level you would like to communicate that information to whatever the relevant audience is for that specific set of scorecards.
So, yeah, we're just go through the mechanics of a roll-up, how you would do that. Maybe at some point you probably want to demo something, but
yeah.
Okay, whatever you want to do. I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, so so the mechanics of a roll-up is pretty straightforward. We had multiple levels.
I'm just gonna, we're 5 after, so.
Oh, we are? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, we are? Oh,
Yeah,
we
so
got,
we're into a break. I don't know if anybody needs to step out.
All right, so why don't we do this? Why don't I leave you with this message? We have a series of exercises that we prepare, that we can come into your operation with you and go through these exercises to help you articulate your governance program, to evaluate your risks within your assets, and to put together a communication program. The value to us is we expand our knowledge of what's useful out there. The value to you is that you get something that allows you to start to have a dialogue with your organization, and then we ultimately might use that as a forum to work together on that project and help you to succeed with metrics in the delivery of this information and your presentations to the board. So we love that opportunity. It's a win-win for us to come in and do that, expand our knowledge, and deliver you something that's helpful, and you're all users of our product, so we have great opportunity just to extend our relationship around sharing knowledge. So we look forward to that opportunity.